Welcome to Grit and Grace. Now, on this episode, we have taken the time to do an interview with the family, and we are talking today again about homeschooling. I hope to give you a glimpse and some information that may be helpful to you as far as a homeschooling parent or somebody who's looking at this, maybe considering this. Now more than ever, there's been this new surge of interest in homeschooling as we see the culture continue to deteriorate, as we lose faith in some of our government officials or our public entities. And just as things get generally crazy, even with the pandemic, we've seen the unpredictability of school, whether it's in school, out of school, e-learning. All these things have driven this new surge of interest, and at least inquiry, to homeschooling. And so we have experienced it as a positive thing, not without its challenges, but we're definitely seeing some fruits from the homeschooling process. And so my hope is, as you enjoy this interview, that you will have many of your questions answered. If we do miss something, or if there's a topic that we haven't hit on, be sure to leave that in the comments below, and we will do our very best to clarify and give you an answer if we have that answer. So without further ado, sit back, get a cup of coffee, grab your favorite snack, let the interview begin. Our family dynamic is that we're believers in Jesus Christ. Would you say that is part of the reason why we chose to homeschool? Do you think it has to do primarily with religion, or is it not related?
Why we originally chose to?
Yeah.
No. As the world's changing, I'm seeing it more and more. God's hand in the original decision making and how that's necessary more and more.
Yeah. Now more than ever with the pandemic and with the changes in culture, there's all of a sudden this new popularity, this new movement in this generation that's looking towards homeschooling. How critical do you think the young years of a child's life are?
Extremely.
And why so?
Because they are not as stained or hardened to the world yet. And so they are more formative in their young years. And having the first opportunity to expose them to truths before the lies come in is heavily important.
What is it that finally made you decide to homeschool?
Honestly?
Yes.
My daughter was 4 and I figured let's try it. Yeah, you can't really mess them up at 4. No, I had lost my job right before it became time to think about it. So I was home, so that made it a possibility, and we had to start thinking about schools. So I started praying about it, interviewing the schools and seeing what we wanted to do. And then through that process, we had moved churches, and more people were coming into our lives that were homeschooling, and I'd never really had anybody in my life that was homeschooling. So I was able to ask some questions similar to what you're asking now and get a little bit more clarity on what it would even look like to homeschool. And so, but yeah, ultimately then I thought, I could do this when she's 4. It's better than trying it when she's in 5th grade or something.
So you start out with baby steps, right? You learn to walk before you run.
Yep.
That's good. And then as time has progressed, you continue to grow just as they're growing. So,
which I do a lot. I do a lot of research and reading about curriculums and what comes next and different steps that they need to be taking.
So that's a perfect transition, because my next question to you was, based upon your research and using these different curriculums hands-on, which curriculums do you recommend as of now, and why?
Oh, that's a loaded question because each kid is so different. So my curriculum choices are not based on because the curriculum is the best. It's because it's what works for my kids. So that being said, pretty much all of our preschoolers, when they would be in 4K or preschool in Wisconsin here, start with the Rod and Staff preschool curriculum. It covers a wide range of topics in cute little books with different like themes and habitats, which almost all kids love animals, so they just love learning about the different habitats along with their ABCs and their handwriting and their math. So that's pretty standard in our house for where they start. Our oldest hated Matthew C for lower grades, but our middle to our siblings actually love it right now. So Matthew C for math is really good. The easy peasy online math, they've all kind of liked, but we've kind of used that as more supplemental here and there. We currently just started using the Good and Beautiful's math, so I don't have a whole lot to take on that, but it looks really hands-on, which is good for our kinesthetic learners. And I like Sunlight, it's great, but it is not a huge fit for or a very good fit for our family because it is so much reading, and we're just not seeming to have a whole lot of avid readers in our house, so it's very overwhelming, and it's a lot. It's good, but it's a lot. This year I'm just kind of putting things together for American history, and moving on to next year, I had two curriculums that I was gonna pick between. It was Story of the World or Mystery of History, because we really enjoy reading the children's history of the world as a family together all the time. All age groups seem to like it. So I wanted a more novel type history for us to go through. So we ultimately landed on Mystery of History because it lines up with Bible history so well. So it's going to do Bible history and world history, which in our opinion would be they go hand in hand. There really should be no difference.
Can you explain to us what a kinesthetic learner is?
Hands-on, tactile. Sitting still is very difficult for long periods of time, which they're young, so that's pretty common anyway. But I have one auditory learner, so she learns by hearing. She doesn't have to see a bunch of things, but she's also a secondary kinesthetic learner. So she has to she'll hear it, and then a lap book will be very helpful for her to retain all that information. I have a visual learner, so hearing it and then being able to do the lap book will also be very helpful for her. And then our kinesthetic learner, obviously, that'll be good for him, the lap books and stuff.
Explain what that mastery concept of teaching is.
It's exactly kind of what it sounds like. It's mastering whatever the concept is that you're working on. So there's a couple different ways you can do that people like to do. Some people call it spiraling or looping, or there's different ways to go about it, but basically you don't move on past something till you know it. So in a looping, you might come back to that topic multiple times throughout the year, like in history or something. You continuously go back through your timelines. You're moving on to here, but you're going back and you're reviewing everything. So you have a mastery of the whole process. When you're talking about math, you don't move on to multiplication if you haven't gotten all of your addition and subtraction done. So if that means your addition and subtraction takes you till 3rd or 4th grade, that's what that means. If it means that you have that all mastered in kindergarten, then you start in multiplication earlier. So it is exactly that. Once you master something, then you can move on. It is exactly more catered to your child than to a grade level.
I'd say one of the biggest benefits even of homeschooling, when you look at the teacher to student ratio, then you take into account that you can give so much more hands-on, focused support to each student, right? Mm-hmm. And then they don't have to worry about being left behind as the system continues to push forward, whether or not they've got it or not.
Or the opposite, bored.
Sure, so you can adapt. What requirements does the state have for monitoring, recording progress of students? Do you have to keep all the paperwork? Do you have a database? Tell us about that.
As of right now, there's not a whole lot of requirements. We don't have to submit anything showing what we're doing or how we're doing it. We have to, for compulsory attendance, you have to say that you are homeschooling at the beginning of the year, in September, October. You would submit that you're going to be homeschooling and how many kids are going to be homeschooling. You don't have to do that until they're 6, which would be their 1st grade year. There's a requirement of 875 school time hours, and there's also per year, per student, obviously. And there is also a requirement that if you're audited, essentially, you have to be able to show that you've been moving forward in their curriculums. I can't think of the word for that right now, but basically, you have a continuing education, that it's continually moving forward, so they're not stagnant in 1st grade when they're not standing at a 1st grade education and going into high school kind of thing.
Will somebody endeavoring to homeschool as a new teacher be all alone?
Kind of depends on them. They could be. You could be all on your own. Right now, we're pretty much on our own because of just the ages of our kids makes it hard to do co-ops and things like that. But there's tons of resources. There's Facebook groups, there's co-ops, if you do something called classical conversations, which is kind of a mastery spiraling way to learn certain things, the classical way. That's a whole program that you go to and you put your kids in for a couple days a week, and that's still considered homeschooling. There's a lot of different groups I know through like the Wisconsin website. I just don't use them. But no, you wouldn't have to be alone.
Of the now graduated homeschoolers that we know, has there been a common conclusion about their homeschooling life? Has it been positive, negative? Has a lot of the now graduated adults who homeschooled, what has been their outlook on their homeschooling journey? Almost everybody,
actually, I should say everybody that we know has liked their homeschooling journey. A lot of people that blogs I've read or friends that I know that were homeschooled are now currently going on to homeschool their children because they enjoyed their homeschooling so much. Doesn't mean every year they loved it or didn't have bad weeks or years, but the big picture, they thought it was best for them and their family. There's a lot of opportunities that kids have, especially when you get into high school, that you don't have and if you're in public school, like taking the college courses that they are able to take because they can test out of whatever college requirements there are. They can have side jobs, they can have full-time jobs and still get their schoolwork done. They can pursue a lot of different interests that they wouldn't have time for if they had to be in public school 8 hours a day. The biggest question I get is, or a biggest question and or statement is, I don't have the patience for that. How do you have the patience for that? And my answer is I don't. I'm not a naturally super patient person. I think doing it from the beginning though has helped because I've learned my kids along the way, and they have learned that our house has rules as far as there's school time and then there's play time. And so that's already been established from the very get-go, because the biggest thing is, well, my kid wants to, play and not do their school if they're being pulled out at an older age. And we do have that, but it's not as much because it's already been laid. That's just the rule. We do school at school time. And also when, you're losing your patience or having trouble with patience, understanding your purpose, like we talked about at the beginning, you have to continuously remind yourself that there's a reason I'm doing this. I'm not doing it because someone's making me. I'm not doing it because I'm being forced into it. It was my choice to do that. I want to do this. I love my kids, even if they drive me crazy a lot of times. I love them, and that's why I'm doing it. I love that we're getting a 9-year-old, so she's soon going to be in those tween teenager ages, and life's already so difficult in those times that it's nice to know her, be around her all the time, to see her changing and go through that with her and alongside of her, instead of being surprised every time she comes home and she's upset or whatever.
What things do you do to ensure that our children don't become socially awkward? Because I think we all have known that one kid who was just like a homeschool weirdo because they just were never given an opportunity to learn how to socialize.
So I don't know anybody who is socially awkward because of that. Actually, I feel like you have more social interaction because the people that you are interacting with are not just your core group of people that are your same age group. You actually know you're taught how to interact with people from baby all the way up to adults, and it's kind of streamlined how you do that. To answer your question, we go to church, we have our Awana group, we have friend groups that already homeschools.
Now, as always, make sure that you check with your laws to see what your state requires. And that way you will be well prepared to embark on this homeschooling journey. If you already are a homeschooler and you just want to chime in with some thoughts or some advice, or because you love something we said, then that would be wonderful to hear from you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If this video is absolute rubbish, then go ahead, give it 2 thumbs down and let us know how terrible we are in the comments section. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope that was educational and informative. I hope you leave this video with a wealth of new knowledge and maybe some direction on where you're going from here. Make sure, if you have any other questions, to hit us in the comments below. And if you want to see more of this homeschooling content, also chime in and let us know. We have so many more things that we could do, even some other interviews with other homeschooling families. Until we see ya, keep learning, keep growing, and keep at it. See ya. Excuse me, close the door and turn that down and stop singing. I'm gonna take a brief pause. I'm gonna get one of those bright red lights that says on air like at Jesse's house from Full House.
Do you think they'd listen?
No, they wouldn't, but I'll kick them out. Heads are gonna roll!
You want a homeschool video? This is it. This is life.
This is real.
Sorry.
This is real.
They never leave.